Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a perfectly adequate show for you today. Bree, what's going on?
Well, we have a fantastic guest to break down what's going on with Italy's new prime minister. And we'll also take a look at some new polling on the Texas gubernatorial race with reporter John C. Moritz. Plus, we'll jump back into the debate on what's driving Venezuelan migrants to the States. That was a spicy one last week. But before we get into that, we want to bring you some updates on Hurricane Ian. As of this morning, the storm has intensified to become an extremely dangerous Category 4 hurricane, nearing catastrophic Category 5 status. It is expected to make landfall just below Tampa Bay on Wednesday. That's today. Our colleague at News Nation, Brooke Schaefer, gave a look at what it's like this morning in Sarasota, which is just south of Tampa. Let's watch.
It has been raining pretty much nonstop since yesterday, but now what we are dealing with are some heavy bands of rain and of wind, about 30 miles per hour right now here in Sarasota, and really that is just the start of it. A lot of people here told they would need to pack up and leave, including people who live in Siesta Key, which is just over that bridge there. Police right now blocking the bridge, stopping people from going to and from. There is a real concern here about storm surge and flooding. A lot of people have packed up their belongings and gone to about a dozen local shelters here in Sarasota. Things starting to get bad, and unfortunately, they're only going to get worse.
Meanwhile, some people are pointing to the role disaster capitalism is playing in the area. Some workers were still expected to finish up their jobs while thousands of Floridians evacuated their homes. Employees at the marketing firm Postcard Mania were being asked to work through the hurricane and were even being encouraged to bring their kids and pets to stay at work overnight to keep from disrupting the business. This is while parts of the state were under evacuation order. And UPS workers were still delivering packages despite the weather warnings, according to labor reporter Jonah Furman.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis warned that the entire state should be on alert over the projected impact of the hurricane.
This is going to have widespread impact. So you see major hurricane Category 4, that initial impact, that's going to be severe. The storm surge is going to be severe. Obviously, the water and the flooding for a slow-moving storm, very severe impacts in Southwest Florida. But those impacts are going to continue going out all through the state. So this is not going to end up leaving the state of Florida until sometime on Friday morning.
Yeah, so I was interested to see, Jonah Furman he caught a whiff of some of these instances that have been reported and put out a call for folks to basically tweet at him, contact him using Signal or whatever means that they had to let them know if they were being asked to work through the storm and kind of contravention of the orders and the warnings that had come down through the state. And we're not talking about, essential workers. Obviously, there are a number of people who you would expect to work through a hurricane. But I think the package delivery example was a good one because, as you saw, there are people who have already evacuated their homes. They've set up sandbags anticipating that there's going to be significant sea level rise, and there's an expectation that it makes any kind of sense to put somebody's paper perishable package on top of that stack.
Yeah, that was pretty dumb. I saw those pictures. I can't imagine it's not even just an issue of making people work when they shouldn't have to work. It's also like the people receiving those packages clearly don't want to get them right now. They're not home. They're going to get washed away, like you said. The other place, though, that Postcard Mania thing, I was looking, and there were people saying that actually that building is like very hurricane resistant and is on high ground compared to like everything else in the area. There's been people saying that if you wanted to seek shelter, that would be an excellent place. So, look, I agree with you. People shouldn't be forced to work through like a catastrophic hurricane. But that actually sounds like a good place to hunker down with your kids and your dogs.
Yeah, look, if it was an offer to shelter there, that'd be one thing. But, taking away somebody's opportunity to flee the area because they have to work and saying, well, at least you can shelter your child in a Category 4 storm at the most safe place in the area when, the obvious alternative was to leave the area is, I think, what people were concerned about. And I do believe that there was some follow-up with that, and the pressure that the business had received over those tweets led them to revise their policy. So good news came out of that after all.
Great. Well, Don Lemon was making the rounds on social media after this clip of him reaching for climate change to be at the heart of the disaster went viral. Let's watch that.
Can you tell us what this is and what effect climate change has on this phenomenon?
Well, we can come back and talk about climate change at a later time. I want to focus on the here and now. We think the rapid intensification is probably almost done. There could be a little bit more intensification as it's still over the warm waters of the eastern Gulf of Mexico, but I don't think we're going to get any more rapid intensification. If you look here, you can actually see, pretty interesting for your viewers, you can actually see a second eye wall forming around the inner eye wall, and that's basically the second eye wall has overtaken the original eye wall, and that should arrest development.
So listen, I'm just trying to get that. You said you want to talk about climate change, but what effect does climate change have on this phenomenon that is happening now? Because it seems these storms are intensifying. That's the question here.
I don't think you can link climate change to any one event. Okay. On the whole, on the cumulative, climate change may be making storms worse, but to link it to any one event, I would caution against that.
Yeah, I think Don Lemon did a characteristically bad job there, kind of shoehorning in a climate change element to talk about this specific hurricane, and the guy he was interviewing was pointing out, right, the theory that, and I know you have talked about this theory, you're a believer in it, that climate change is making severe weather events more common or more destructive, that kind of thing. That's possible. I know that lots of climate change scientists believe that. I know that's what the Interclimate Panel government came to that conclusion. But we have had, hurricanes were not invented by climate change.
No, most certainly not. And I don't know that I really perceive that clip as a real tension or a real point of conflict. Don Lemon, to his credit, is simply asking a climate expert what, if any, role climate change plays here. And I think the climate expert is right to say it is wrong scientifically to conclusively attribute any one storm to climate change. That's not how it works. It's a cumulative effect where if you look at the incidence of hurricanes and the incidence of extreme weather events, they have gotten more prevalent over recent years. And so there's a clear trajectory there that people attribute to climate change. If you don't attribute it to climate change, you still have to attribute it to something. And there's I think a relevant question about why it is that we have these kind of weather events with more frequency. But of course, you're right that, they didn't spring fully formed out of Zeus's head like Athena last night. We've been dealing with this for a really long time. Let's discuss the ongoing aftermath of another devastating storm. It's been more than a week since Hurricane Fiona hit Puerto Rico and left thousands without electricity and water. But this week, the island's residents are still experiencing blackouts. And now Puerto Rican Governor Pedro Pierluisi is calling on President Biden to grant the approval of a ship carrying about 300,000 barrels of necessary diesel fuel. The ship was scheduled to arrive to Puerto Rico over the weekend, but because of a 100-year-old shipping law known as the Jones Act, the ships carrying the fuel have been unable to dock due to the law's restrictions that impose tariffs and taxes on foreign vessels that dock in U.S. ports.
Oh, frustrating. Yesterday, FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell gave comment to reporters saying whether or not the administration would grant a waiver to allow much-needed fuel to reach the island.
We are committed to doing everything that we can within our legal authority to support the people of Puerto Rico. And we know that the Jones Act waiver is one of those things. We have a legal obligation to ensure that each waiver request meets the legal requirements of Congress. And so any final determination on that will be made by the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Reports out of the Washington Post indicate that Biden is willing to help, sort of. According to a person familiar with the matter, White House officials are pushing federal agencies to approve a legal waiver of the Jones Act, while administration officials say they have no legal authority to provide a one-year waiver. They are instead pushing for DHS to grant Puerto Rico a one-time exemption. A spokesman for BP said a waiver request had been submitted last week. So this is a subject I return to frequently because it is very frustrating. Not only should they grant a waiver, they should just end the law. It's stupid. Like if the people of Puerto Rico desperately need gas right now, they always need gas. They could always be less expensive for that. They could always have cheaper energy if we just got rid of this law, which again is designed to protect certain shipping companies 100 years ago.
Do you have a sense of what the congressional posture of this is like? Do we live in a world where conservatives might support this on a bipartisan basis, especially given the emergency that we're facing right now?
I really don't know. I think a decade ago, the answer to that would have been absolutely yes. It's very much a protectionist kind of corporate collusion, like it benefits a couple firms at the expense of very much at the expense of general free market principles. But now, unfortunately, the Republican Party has moved on economic policies away from my views, probably toward your views in some ways, but on this.
How so?
Well, there's a lot of there's more contempt for capitalism and free market. Talk about labor, how it's harmful to outsourcing of jobs, that kind of thing, is more popular among, or is a greater concern to the Republican Party. And I think that's all fine, well, and good, but this might be a case where they say, no, the government should protect American shipping companies or something like that. I hope not. I think that would be stupid.
I see, like an America
buy
first.
American, hire American. That's the thinking of this law. But Puerto Ricans are Americans who are suffering and struggling for no reason. So I would like to frame it to Republicans and to Democrats as a stupid example of government overreach, of government making people's lives more difficult for no legitimate reason whatsoever.
Yeah, I hear that, Robby. No pushback from me on this one.
Great. Well, we'll find out if that streak keeps going.
Will it hold?
Briahna's Radar's up next.